Unfortunately, your average doctor thinks that a low oxalate diet means no vegetables and no greens, when in fact, there's only 3 major greens, or 4 if you count sorrel, chard, beet greens, and spinach. Beyond that, you're free to go. Anything that's a cabbage family and anything that's a green, you're good to go. And it's a little trickier with some of the others, but it just isn't that much to choose from beyond those categories.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very excited to have back on a special guest. We had her on almost 2 years ago, and it was one of the most well-received and interesting podcast episodes that we've recorded. So we had to have her back. Her name is Sally K. Norton, and she is the author of a book called Toxic Superfoods: How Oxalate Overload is Making You Sick and How to Get Better. This is such an important topic because there are so many so-called health foods that are actually really hurting people, and they're completely unaware of it. And so Sally's doing an incredible job spreading the word and awareness about these foods. Sally holds a nutrition degree from Cornell University and a master's degree in public health. She has a very long list of accolades, but I think most important, what I want to get into is her own personal journey and story and what she learned from that. So Sally, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back with you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about my favorite topic.
Yes.
Warning people like, hello, you might be doing the right thing. And if it's like me, eating healthy was the worst mistake of my life.
Whoa. Right. Yeah. And so let's get into that. So let's assume people didn't listen to the episode 2 years ago. Let's give them a quick rehash of your story and all the struggles and how you healed yourself.
Yeah, so there was a lot of struggles. It probably started very early with all the strep and so on as a kid that led to the tonsils coming out at age 5, which made me very aware of how bad it is to be sick, to be barred from the swimming pool in the summer and have to have drops and have that horrible liquid penicillin spooned in your face multiple times. And the surgery was traumatic, like tonsillectomy. I did not like that one bit. So I've been a nutrition geek since that time because I've always wanted to prevent illness because illness sucks. Well, it turns out I didn't know how to do that. And it wasn't going well. By age 12, I had back pain and all kinds of issues. In college, I had terrible foot pain and ended up leaving Cornell, where I was trying to get my nutrition degree, for 4 years because I needed a foot surgery. And I maintained foot problems really through my whole adulthood. I never could go barefoot or run, jump, play. Racket sports are out. You know, a lot of the fun of life not happening. And lots of other problems too, which was really bad chronic fatigue. Really serious issues with chronic fatigue and bloating and arthritis and you name it. So So what is up? Well, you're like committed to your health. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't mess around, because we're really committed to like not getting sick and preserving the gonads for the future and all these things I wanted to do. And it turns out that a lot of what I did for my health and nutrition was wrong, despite my degree from Cornell. And I didn't figure that out to 49 going on 50. And at that point, I figured out, much to my dismay, that the sweet potatoes and the foods I've been living on off and on. I mean, like, you can collect this sort of menagerie kind of cafeteria style of foods that have too much of this natural toxin oxalate in them. Just made by nature. It's made in nature in all kinds of places, including plants deliberately make this oxalic acid and calcium oxalate crystals. And even the plants in the produce department, which is that special safe zone with plants, you know, like you can't just go out in your backyard or the woods to eat plants. You have to go to a store to find plants that are edible. Most of the other ones aren't, or else you wouldn't be paying for produce. Who's going to spend $100 a week on produce if it's free in your backyard? You can't do that because we have specially developed these plants to become more edible and techniques to make them more edible. And we're not realizing that anymore. Now we think, oh, plants are so wonderful. They're just here to be eaten. They're the rainbow and they're making us so great. But we have forgotten that plants are fundamentally toxic. And oxalate is one of the major toxins that plants have. It's not the only one, but it turns out it's one that we choose to ignore. it has no positive upsides, unlike other plant chemicals like tannins and things that are technically polyphenols are getting a pass, which may be a mistake, because we're not fully understanding our science and what's working. But doing the right thing, eating a plant centric diet. I was a vegetarian for 8 years and then a vegan for 8 years. So I had 16 years of plants. And even after getting off of them, I became a sweet potato aficionado, because I was now at this point, I had damaged my gut and my system so much on this healthy living that I could no longer tolerate the beans and the wheat and the grains, and I was using sweet potato as a starch. But in the meantime, I've been growing up on Swiss chard, still cook Swiss chard every week, usually more than once. Thought I loved it.
Mm.
Beets and beet greens. I grew up with, like, holiday time. We had this holiday, like kind of like a fruitcake type thing.
Mhm.
That's all citrus peel. That's high oxalate. I would make tea after school in high school. That's a high oxalate food. Just like little ways, little cute little habits. If you like peanut butter or nuts or chocolate or potatoes or French fries or potato chips, or like, there's little habits you might have that could be loading you up with oxalic acid and calcium oxalate crystals, which are both pro-inflammatory and both causing destructive effects in your body. And you can't tell it's going on.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, this is so for I know a lot of people listening now, they're like, wow, this is a lot. Wait, all these plant-based foods that I've been told for all these years are so healthy are not actually healthy. And are there certain plants that are okay versus not? But let's back up. Let's actually start by just giving a brief explanation of what is, what are oxalates and which foods do you think are, I know there's a lot of foods that have oxalates, but what if we focused on like the worst of the worst, maybe name off a few of those?
Right. Okay. So oxalates are called oxalates because it has these different forms. The parent compound is oxalic acid. It's a
Mm.
2 carbon molecule with 4 oxygens on it. It almost looks like 2 carbon dioxide molecules. It's super tiny, and it's easily made. It's a kind of oxidative end product. So, for example, vitamin C degrades into oxalate very easily.
Hmm.
Even capsules of vitamin C might have oxalate in it because it just degrades even without enzymes. And in the body, it degrades into oxalate. So this is another healthy habit of taking, say, a gram or half a gram or more of vitamin C every day, just in case you're loading yourself up with oxalate and have no idea. Like
Hmm.
my grandmother, when I was a little kid, she had a big jug of chewable, tasty vitamin C tablets. They're kind of like a sweet tart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she would give us one periodically as kind of a little healthy treat. I
Hmm.
grew up doing that. Like, oops,
Right.
that's a lot for a kid. A full gram of vitamin C was too much to give to an 8-year-old or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we don't know that. We still aren't being told what's in the science. It turns out I wasn't being told this at Cornell either. So oxalate is this little oxalic acid parent compound. And what it does is it has a negative charge, or two. It can drop another proton
Hmm.
and have two. So this negative charge makes it attracted to positively charged things. So it is what's called a chelator. We
Hmm.
put oxalic acid into many kinds of industrial chemicals and household cleaners. So
Hmm.
Barkeeper's Friend has oxalic acid in it, Zud cleaner, wood bleaches, engine cleaners, rust removers. Something that removes rust or calcium off a toilet is going to have oxalic acid. If you look it up, how to clean a toilet, oxalic acid, how to get rust out of your deck, oxalic acid, how to get rust out of your engine, oxalic acid. Well, it does that because it grabs these minerals so well. It loves calcium. So in nature, it tends to become calcium oxalate. So it's
Hmm.
called oxalate now because that's considered a salt. In salt, like you have sodium and chloride, and they
Hmm.
dissolve in water and they become ions when they separate. Well, if you have oxalate with certain ones, it can separate in water. But with calcium, it has the double bonding going on because calcium is 2 positive, oxalate's a 2 negative. And that double hook seems to be like a marriage made in heaven. They love each other and they want to hang out for life. So they don't dissolve easily. So that's an
Hmm.
insoluble oxalate mostly, but the body knows how to play with it. But the other thing is it's a toxin that does this mineral grabbing. It becomes these salts. It can connect with heavy metals or other minerals of all kinds in the body and in the environment. In fact, they use it sometimes to take heavy metals out of toxic water.
Wow.
You can clean toxic water with oxalic acid, and it becomes these crystals. So once you get the oxalic acid and the metal together, then they form these little pairs. And once you get about 8 or 10 pairs, they form bigger crystals. So that's falling out of being individual molecules into becoming a cluster that's now a crystal. And that can happen in the tissues, it can happen in the bloodstream, and it can start to build up. And the way you know about this building up of calcium oxalate crystals is the kidney stone. 80% rather of kidney stones. 80% of all kidney stones are primarily made of oxalic acid and calcium. Your doctor tends to call it a calcium stone. They forget to tell you that it's impossible to turn calcium into a stone without either the body making bone or oxalate there turning it into crystals. So if you don't eat a lot of oxalate, you can't put a lot of it into your urine and you can't make a stone. Fundamentally, we know how to prevent kidney stones.
So kidney stones would be one. What are some other symptoms where people, maybe there's people listening right now, they're like, I think I eat healthy. I was told to eat mostly plant-based, so that's what I'm doing. But I just don't seem to have energy maybe, or people who have, so-called, autoimmune diseases they get diagnosed with, or are those some of the common symptoms?
Yes. If you struggle with fatigue, brain fog, any kind of mood issues, sleep problems, coordination problems, if you're kind of klutzy, vision problems, hearing problems, tooth pain, tartar on the teeth, these are all signs. Cloudy urine. Most of us don't get kidney stones. I was able to pick out on the highest ones. You asked me to talk about the worst ones. Well, the worst ones are the top 3 or 4 greens, which is Swiss chard, beet greens. It's actually the same plant. Spinach and sorrel are the greens. That's it. All the other greens are fine.
Kale?
Kale is not that high. Now, some kales are a little higher, but kale per serving might have about 12 to 20 at the worst milligrams of oxalate. Whereas spinach is going to have in a salad where you're just having fluffy stuff, like a cup and a half, maybe 400 to 500 milligrams compared to 20 at the worst. So that's way more. Now, a salad, if you throw it in your pot and make it cooked, will give you like 2 teaspoons. It cooks way down, right? So when you cook spinach, you eat a lot more. So boiling, and no one boils spinach, but in theory, if you boiled it, you could reduce some of that soluble oxalate and remove some, but you're using so much more spinach, you're going from maybe 400 for a salad to 800 for cooked spinach. So even though people think cooked doesn't help you, especially when you're making food more dense and you're eating more of it. And the other way you're making it more dense is you're putting it in the blender and turning it into a smoothie. Now with a smoothie, most people go past that 800 and they're getting closer to 1,000. Not only because the spinach is there, now you're breaking apart the cell walls and you're really liberating that oxalic acid in a nice liquid. And in the liquid, those little ions of soluble oxalic acid is a single ion that's just floating in water. And that's the thing that's really going to get you the worst. And now by you breaking it up and getting in a liquid, you're going to pour some almond milk in there, more oxalates, and make it more liquidy. It's more easily moving that oxalic acid from your food into your bloodstream and your stomach and the intestines and so on. So within 20 minutes or less, it's moving into your bloodstream, and it keeps doing that for like 8 hours. Now in that smoothie, not only did you take it and liquefy it and make it more dilute in a way, but super concentrated at the same time because it's in liquid form, more easily floating into your body. But almond milk is the same thing. It's a dilute solution of oxalic acid. Even though there's very few almonds in commercial almond milk, it's quite bioavailable, which means it gets into your biology, moving from your food into your blood and your cells and your tissues. And in that smoothie, people are adding things like turmeric, another super high oxalate food.
Really?
If it's whole. Yeah, but if you make an extract out of turmeric using like curcumin-based extracts, that's almost no oxalate at all.
Yeah, because I've heard about turmeric being, or at least a supplement being good for lowering inflammation as being one of our best natural options for lowering inflation. But that's an extract.
Don't go with the whole root. That's the confusion. And we think whole is better than the processed extract. I'm going to do the real thing, right? Oh yeah, you're going to put the real, because it like Costco here, you can just buy it like in these massive containers and just be pouring it in like it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so you can really take your spinach smoothie, add the almond milk or almond butter or peanut butter or turmeric or cacao powder, and take it into steroids and go way past 1,000 milligrams in one meal.
And what's a safe daily, what should we be trying to stay under per day, do you think, milligrams?
Under 200.
Under 200 a day.
What
Okay.
what we think we're eating is about 100 to 200, and we tolerate about 100 milligrams pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
A day, a whole day spread out over a day. Now, if you're eating 10 times that in one smoothie, you are getting in what I call the danger zone. This is where you might as well be like drinking battery acid or drinking your Zud cleaner. This is not good. You really would do well to take that smoothie and use it to clean your deck.
Yeah.
Or
Wow.
your toilet.
Yeah. You know what's funny? After last episode we recorded a couple of years ago, one night we went out to a steakhouse and I ordered, as a side, some sauteed spinach. And as I was eating it, I could feel the crystals. I could feel like anyone who's eaten spinach might understand this. Like it's kind of like a grindy, sandy kind of feeling. And I remember you mentioned that's the oxalates there, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's the crystals of oxalate in the spinach or if it's the oxalic acid stealing the calcium out of your teeth and forming crystals right there in your mouth. Possible. Now, the mouth is really in danger with oxalates because you're eating it directly and chewing it. Hopefully you chew your food and, it's all bathing your teeth. And it gets into your bloodstream and comes back into the jaw and the gums, and the teeth are full of little capillaries. They're a living tissue. So there's a lot of calcium there. So there's a sort of magnet there, and you chew all the time. So there's a certain wear and tear. And as cells get weak and die from old age, they become a depository for oxalate because they no longer have the metabolic heft to protect themselves. So oxalate tends to start sticking in your tissues where you have worn out cells that are old and tired, or there's inflammation there, or infection there, or they're regenerating. So the new cells that are coming along to replace the old cells, those are also not equipped yet to protect themselves. You can think of them as little babies not ready for school. And so those tissues will get deposits. And so we tend to get deposits of oxalate in our jaw because we use it so much to talk and smile and chew. Some people chew all day long with their gum and their this and that, right? So that's the mouth gets you're eating it and then it's coming into the blood, but it's also in the saliva. So the saliva concentrates oxalate. I think it's 10 to 30 times higher than what's in the bloodstream. So after you ate the oxalate, let's say you had that steak at 6 p.m. with your spinach. So at 10 p.m., you get a peak of oxalate in your bloodstream. So at 10 p.m., you no longer got it in your mouth, but you have it in your mouth because both the blood supplying your teeth and gums and the saliva that is in, lubricating your teeth and gums is full of oxalate. And the next morning you might wake up with heavy tartar under here behind your incisors, and you could check in the morning and see, hey, there's my spinach oxalate sticking to my teeth. You can see it. So if you tend to get tartar, look for that as a symptom. But not everyone gets the same symptoms. A lot of us don't get kidney stones. I could eat oxalate like crazy and I will never get a kidney stone because we are fundamentally, as a species, protected against them. We have 4 or 5, we have several mechanisms anyway that protect us from getting kidney stones. It's just 12% of the population doesn't quite have all those mechanisms in place genetically. And so they're genetically susceptible to oxalate showing up as kidney stones, which, by the way, is a gift from God. Because
Tell me more.
a kidney stone will get your attention.
Yes.
It will say, sit up right now and notice, right? Because it's so painful. And it's the one place in medicine where we recognize oxalate as a poison.
So will most doctors, when you go to them and you have a kidney stone, will they actually say, hey, I would assume most of them would say, hey, you need to eat more of a plant-based diet or something, but hopefully they're being educated.
We're right. They are not properly educated. They're not properly educating their patients. They are steering them wrong and telling them to go eat plant-based. They think, oh, you eat too much meat and too much milk. Stop all that. Might as well just have salads. They are giving them the wrong information,
Yeah.
which is so embarrassing because oxalate problems and kidney stones have been known since about 1800.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
the oxalate ability to cause health problems that changes your mood and makes you neurotic and anxious and makes you have arthritis and aches and pains and gives you kidney stones and urinary tract problems like frequent urination, peeing at night, having to run to the, all that kind of urinary misbehaving. We've known that oxalate in the diet, namely in the form of rhubarb, which is like spinach on really steroid kind of level of oxalate in rhubarb.
Mm.
We've known that since there's a diagnosis that came up in 1843, something like that, 1840 something. And so why doesn't your doctor know this? That's where you get into recognizing that the medical literature and the medical culture is a human invention that has been heavily contaminated by all kinds of motives that have nothing to do with the public's health.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree on that.
Very sad. It's very sad. I mean, as a researcher, if I'm a kidney stone researcher, my job is to get funding and to tell everybody we need to fund this problem because this is still a problem. We don't need to solve the problem because then I put myself out of business. So we know you could stop kidney stones if you got people off spinach smoothies and almond butter and keto bread made with nuts and quit pouring turmeric down their gullets and quit living on sweet potatoes like I did. We could solve the kidney stone problem, but who wants to do that?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
for anybody's career.
Right. Misalignment of incentives. Let me ask you, so what other foods, I want to also talk about which other foods are high in oxalates, but then you also mentioned there are other kind of toxins, not just oxalates, that are in other plants as well. Peanut butter, we hear a lot of people have issues with tomatoes, peanut butter. Is that just all oxalates or there's some other stuff?
No. In fact, like beans are the worst, probably. You really got to deal with lectins. Gundry wrote a book on lectins. It's not completely accurate, but the concept is so important. They did not teach us this at Cornell. You have to take 2 semesters of food labs and you learn about gluten balls and broccoli colors and how to make rolls and who knows what. It's pretty not too exciting stuff. We could have been learning about lectins and plant compounds at least for half an hour. Someone could have mentioned it, but they didn't. You have to soak them, the beans and a lot of other kind of seedy things like the grains and so on. You have to soak them for at least 10, 12 hours to lower phytic acid, which also is a mineral chelator and can be a little tough on the digestion, and lower the nutrient value of that food because we really have trouble getting any nutrients out of grains with bran in them, and those things are preventing us from digesting them well and blocking nutrients from being available for nutritional purposes. So you've got the phytates, but the lectins, you've got to soak those beans and get them to germinate basically before you see it. But you need the literature suggests 3.5 to 4 days of soaking. Nobody soaks their beans for 4 days. But even if you did it for 2 days, that would make a big difference. And then that's not enough. They still need heat treatment to destroy the shape of these protein molecules. Lectins are ginormous protein molecules, very different than oxalate. And you need to pressure cook to get that level of heat. And I didn't know that. I came out of Cornell and I threw my unsoaked hard beans into a slow cooker overnight and then ate them the next morning and destroyed my gut doing that.
Yeah, beans are a big one, I think, for a lot of people. And again, because it's, when you talk about plant-based or people that are pushing the vegan kind of agenda, it's like that's your main source of protein is the beans. So what are you going to do if you can't have beans? People are still.
You're going to soak them. You're going to soak them and have multiple pressure cookers on your counter. That's just if you're smart. The sad part is those of us in the health field, even the nutrition field, are so sub-educated and so thrown out these bigger concepts. My professor, who is a major author and so on, was very much an ideological vegetarian, mostly vegan. He was anti-dairy. Dairy is a very important protective food that protects us against phytates and oxalates because it's got the calcium, enough calcium. You can waste the calcium when you're eating these foods. They're destroying your ability to use the calcium in milk. But when you take milk out, you take out a protective food. Now, we used to call milk a protective food that protects people from all the major problems back at the turn of the last century. And we really insisted on dairy as a food group until very recently, which is super sad. So that's a bit of a tangent, but
Yeah,
we,
some
we don't
people,
know. As professionals, we don't
yeah,
know what we're talking about.
yeah, yeah. Some people, I mean, some people have issues with dairy. Some people that
I
don't have.
do.
Yeah, and do you think that's? You think nobody should have issues with dairy, or you think it's kind of like some people do, some people don't?
I hardly would tell God how to make everybody be, but I can
Sure,
tell you that most of us who have health problems aren't tolerating dairy well at all.
got it.
But what is that secondary to? Is that really just like you're supposed to quit eating dairy when you're 5 or whatever? Is it, or is it something else going on with our health? It used to be that people seemed okay. The French and all over the world, dairy foods, particularly dairy foods that are fermented, were really more common than eating fresh milk. I think maybe you should be done with fresh milk in childhood and switch to cheese and yogurt
Yeah,
and kefir and stuff. And probably fresh milk is much harder for grown-ups to digest for different reasons. But I think we really do well. Those who can eat milk and cheese, the data suggests that they're protective foods, that your longevity and your vitality is improved on those foods. But modern people, our immune systems and our guts are just not what they once were. That's my feeling about it. And when you've had all this processed food for 100 years full of gums and things like that that affect the digestive system, and then this liberal sense that you should be eating a lot of plants, and fast food selling you potatoes in every form. You can get a whole baked potato covered in chili or cheese or whatever. You can get tater tots, french fries, potato chips. Like, that's way too much of fundamentally a toxic food that has no nutrient value whatsoever, but it's cheap. And these things have probably eroded our health, to be growing up on chocolate cake when you turn 1, and potatoes everywhere, and peanut butter everywhere, and whole wheat this and that, and beans for an expense. And that isn't doing us any favors, especially in the context of all this, like artificial preservatives,
mhm,
gums. The gums are particularly hard in the digestive tract. So it's an interesting mix of desserts, chocolate, junk food, processed ingredients, factory over processed things, and liberal ideas about, oh, plants are so healthy, you should eat them raw. Like, there was a sort of California attitude that came up in the late 60s and bloomed in the 70s, where now everyone's serving raw vegetables with dip.
yeah. I remember being a raw. I tried being a raw vegan some time back because it was like, oh, this is what I got to do if I want to be healthy. I got to be a raw vegan and just like eat raw vegetables all the time.
How did you last on that?
It caused some real health problems for me, and it only and I reversed it by going paleo and yeah, removing all the grains and all that stuff as well was a big thing for me.
How could you tell and connect it? Because, I was busy hurting myself on a vegetarian and vegan diet and getting extremely fatigued. My arthritis was going bananas. I couldn't walk up and down the stairs. I'm like 26 years old and I can't walk up and down the stairs. I was 19. I didn't have the strength to open the door.
Mm.
I had so much problems, and I never connected my diet to that. How did you do that?
I had massive pain and inflammation in my fingers, hands, wrists, on the keyboard all day. So yeah, obviously, I'm using the keyboard, but so are millions of other people. So why am I, in so much pain that I had to use a voice dictation software for 2 years until I was
Oh,
able to turn my health around. So yeah, I had a pretty intense symptoms there as well. And again, I mean, first, look, I was being a stupid vegan vegetarian too, because it was like, first of all, when you're a raw vegan and you're just eating like fruits and vegetables, you can never get full. So you're just like eating, and then you're like, I'm going to the sandwich shop and getting a foot long, with just vegetables in it, and it's like I'm just eating bread and all these inflammatory foods. So for me, high carb was really bad, and I think vegan kind of leans itself to be more high carb and just kind of like never being satiated. So for me, going to a lower carb, higher protein, higher healthy fats was a complete game changer.
yeah. Well, there's essential nutrients in butter fat and other animal fats, and protein is a fundamental requirement. So eventually your body's starving for those things. And so I was living on tofu, and like, I would go through 3/4 of a pound of tofu a day some weeks. I would make it, I would fry it for breakfast. I would stuff shells and make stuff like macaroni things with it. I would make a chocolate cream pie with it. Like I was like needing the protein
Yeah.
and just ruining my hormones. I think the whole combination of all these things, the high oxalate and the soy and so on that happened, led me to have endometriosis and fibroids later. The oxalate's a big part of all of that. But these plant compounds, like the things that are in soy, the oxalates, the phytates, the lectins, they're ganging up on us if we don't know how to like tame them down. And so with phytates and lectins, you can soak and cook them out and deal with them, not out, but
Lower the amount.
deactivate them, kind of like defang them. But with oxalates, it's really about getting the amount that you consume down, because cooking, heat and pressure and grinding doesn't do anything to them. You can leach them out if you take them out, like with taking turmeric and taking it down to the extract. You can remove it. You can remove some of it by using white rice instead of brown rice. You can remove a little bit by boiling and throwing out the water, but you can't just throw it in the soup.
And by the way, when we were taught growing up that the brown rice is healthier than the white rice. So tell us the story there.
On paper, brown rice has twice as many minerals and nutrients. But in the digestive tract, it has half of what white rice has, because it's all tied up with oxalates and phytates and other things. You can't actually digest it. And it's also abrasive, and with the bran and that these chemicals that we're talking about are all hard in the digestive tract. So in fact, you get more nutrients out of white rice than brown rice, but on paper, brown rice is twice as good. So this is, again, academia saying in the lab this, not really understanding how nutrition works.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I would say that white rice, I mean, I would question how many actual beneficial nutrients there are, but I would say it's more of this is a way to, if you need a little bit of carbs, what's a source of carbs? And I remember on our last episode, you mentioned, because so many of these sources of carbs are contaminated, right? Like not contaminated, but potatoes, sweet potatoes, right? Which most people would say, oh, these are from the earth. These are the healthy form of carbohydrates, right? They're better than bread and pasta, which are the processed carbs. So you would say, oh, potato, sweet potato, but you're sounding the alarm on those being very high on oxalates. And so I guess it kind of leaves white rice and I guess just natural stuff that you would get from maybe other vegetables.
Yes, white rice is actually a sensible form of calories and carbohydrates. And some people do very well on some carbohydrates. And I think most of us, at least periodically, need quite a bit of carbohydrates to kind of top up the muscle glycogen, the liver glycogen, and keep your kind of cortisol and the sort of stress hormones that it requires to keep your liver cranking out carbs all the time, because you have to keep a certain amount of the right amount of carbs in your bloodstream. And the body does go on alert for a lot of people if they just go like zero carb for a long time. So carbs have their place, and rice is a good choice in a lot of ways if it's not grown in arsenic-laden soils. And if you do that rinsing and soaking, you can reduce arsenic and the phytates and so on. So you really should put rice in water, maybe with some bentonite clay to increase the removal of the arsenic contamination, a little bit of vinegar to keep the right bacteria growing in there, and put it in a fridge even while you're soaking it. Just to make sure you're not cultivating some of the toxic bacteria that get into rice. So it turns out that rice is a leftover. You got to make sure you keep that properly cold, because if you leave leftover rice sitting around, it will grow these bacteria that aren't heat killed. So there's bacteria that come with the rice that aren't killed in cooking. So you need to be careful with rice, but it is a sensible carb. That's why all of Asia has rice as a staple, and so much of South America and Central America use rice as a staple. So you can't completely dismiss the fact that humanity has used processed wheat and white. Why go to the trouble of taking rice and making it white all over Asia? Because it's better. Because it's a lot of work. If you're a poor person, you got to bother to take the bran off. Who wants to do that? I'm hungry. don't bother, honey, just give me the brown rice. No, we make a point of turning it into white. We make a point of processing bread with a fermentation process
Mm.
that makes it more digestible. A slow kind of sourdough is the right way to make bread. But at Cornell, when we made rolls, we did it in a 1 hour class
Oh,
from
wow.
flour to the oven. We didn't learn about why you need that long multiple risings, punch down, rise, and the sort of more slow kind of sourdough process. We did not learn any of those proper preparation techniques that humanity developed over eons
Hmm.
in school. So, in a lot of ways, academia is sort of putting a whitewash over what humanity's wisdom already was.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to get into now some of your favorite healthy foods, because some people may be thinking, what can I eat? What's left for me? But yeah, what are some safe vegetables? I think you're a fan of like animal proteins and things like that. But yeah, tell us a little bit. What are some of your favorite foods?
I'm a big fan of butter. I'm a big fan of animal proteins, including pork. Now, I know pork, a lot of religions and so on, like fundamentalist Christians don't like pork and Jews don't eat pork and so on, but it is high in thiamine.
Mm.
And there aren't many really high thiamine foods. And so in Asia, you see pork very heavily used in Japan and China, for example, because that thiamine in it. So we don't want to totally dismiss pork, which is like the considered dirty food, but
Right.
it's a nutritionally useful and tasty and affordable food for people who don't have a lot of money.
Mm.
Fish and seafood super important, and again, there's a contamination problem. A lot of the mercury in fillings and other dental things and medical products have been put in the ocean and have contaminated the fish. So you're better off with sardines and small fish. And sardines, luckily, you can eat the whole animal where you get the roe.
Mm.
So those are the egg sacs. A lot of those sardines are full of roe, and you eat the whole sardine. So you've got the bones, you get the calcium, which is, other than dairy, fish bones is one of the few places to get calcium.
Mm.
And you can eat the skin, which is nice connective tissue. People talk about collagen and they're doing all those supplements, but a good sardines got your collagen supplements, got your dairy substitute with the bones, and has that nice superfood quality of the roe with the vitamin A and all that. So sardine is like a magic food. I like them. And with the plant foods, you want to get away from things like quinoa and teff and whole grains, and even macaronis are pretty high in oxalate.
Mm.
And like we said, the rice is a good alternative. And if you need something that looks like potato, you can take turnips and cauliflower. They're from the cabbage family. The cabbage family, the whole family is generally pretty low. I mean, there's a little bit of oxalates in Brussels sprouts and a few of them. Some of the kales are a little on the higher side, but compared to the spinach and so on, no, not a problem. And so
Mm.
you can play around with the whole cabbage family, which includes, I think, watercress is in that family, but that's also low regardless of its family, and other exotic greens, including all the lettuces, very low. Basic green headed cabbage, very low. A little bit more in the red cabbage, but nothing to be concerned about. You got collards, mustard greens, turnip tops, so on. Tons of greens, just fine. So the greens, there's lots of them. Unfortunately, your average doctor thinks that a low oxalate diet means no vegetables and no greens, when in fact, there's only 3 major greens, or 4 if you count sorrel, chard, beet greens, and spinach.
Mm.
Beyond that, you're free to go. Anything that's a cabbage family and anything that's a green, you're good to go. And it's a little trickier with some of the others, but it just isn't that much to choose from beyond those categories until you get to the fruit department. In the fruits, they're not too terrible. They're mostly crystals of oxalate, not a lot of the oxalic acid, so it's not highly soluble. But the ones to avoid for sure are, well, people think of rhubarb as a fruit. It's actually like celery. It's a stalk, right?
Mm.
Petiole, officially botanical people call it. That is not a fruit, but because it's so sour, we sweeten it and turn it into dessert. Rhubarb, avoid that. All forms, nectars, products, even capsules, like don't do rhubarb.
Mm.
And star fruit, that's deadly. But you don't pick out on star fruit. So you're fine. Raspberries and blackberries, particularly blackberries, are kind of high. So you don't want to be living on those. But
Mm.
most of the fruits in reasonable quantities, half a grapefruit, that kind of thing. And the yellow grapefruit is lower than the red grapefruit, but fruits are mostly okay.
Mm.
You can play around with them. So what else have we got to think
Great.
about? I
So
guess
yeah.
peas and beans. The other one would be instead of beans, go to peas. So black eyed peas, chickpeas, green peas, those are all legumes with protein that are not very high in oxalate. Lentils are back and forth with some are more oxalated than others. They're kind of all over the place. They're generally on the low side, but they're very high in lectins. So even though lentils are kind of fun and easy, you got to be really careful with them. They have to be soaked and high pressure cooked and turn into mush,
Mm,
really. So a long cooked lentil soup done in your pressure cooker is fine. Same with the peas. You can use black eyed peas or chickpeas or other pea like things to substitute for bean soup and so on. So you can still have a lot of these things. You can make a dip or a sort of Mexi style mashed bean, just switch to the peas.
mm, nice, nice. And you mentioned like beets are another one. Is that high in oxalates?
Yes, beets are high in oxalate. So
Okay.
from the root vegetables, you got the potatoes, sweet potatoes, beets. They're all high oxalate.
Mm,
Parsnips are a little high in oxalate, so they're just like one parsnip for 8 servings kind of soup bowl, not like as a major thing that you eat a lot.
yeah.
Carrots are kind of medium-ish, so you got to cut back on your carrot portions. Put a little in your
Mm,
salad, but don't have piles and piles of carrots or carrot juice. That wouldn't be so great.
mm,
But there, you don't. It's not a strict like no, 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 no all the time with this. It's about awareness and getting to familiar with the oxalate levels. Now that is an effort. Like education is valuable, but it takes the will to do the work. And even getting the right data, like if you go online and say what's high, what's low, you're going to get wrong information left and
mm,
right. Like online, they say dates are high in oxalate. Dates are not high in oxalate. Figs are high. Oh, here's a fruit I forgot about.
mm.
Important one to avoid. Can you remember what this is? The other fruit I forgot. It's very popular right now. It's got a fuzzy exterior.
Kiwi.
Kiwi.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kiwi is bad news. That's how I finally had my breakthrough in recognizing that oxalate was literally connected to my arthritis. I did not know that. But the
Mm,
data is really tricky. So I tried to pull together best I could what exists with testing, reliable testing,
mm,
and put it in a resource. So you can get that only on my website. You can't get much of my stuff on Amazon, just one book there, Toxic Superfoods. Everything else you have to come to my website for. And
yeah.
that's this whole data book that's got a lot of explanation teaching about data and then a whole bunch of tables that are all color coded. So this helps you see like, okay, honey is not high in oxalate. This is the sweeteners. This color
Mm,
coding, white and green means green light. But when you see all these oranges and reds, that's some stuff. Ooh, what is that? This is whole wheat flour, bran, whole lot of oxalate.
mm.
So this is meant to be kind of quick and you can peruse through it. And this is all vetted based on research, is the most accurate list you can get. Which is
Amazing.
important for those who really want to like how much carrots can I have or whatever, and or those of us who are literally created a condition I've called oxalate overload, where you've overloaded your diet and your body with oxalates, and now your body's got this contamination, particulate pollution set up in your tissues. Your thyroid gland has it, guaranteed. Your eyeballs have it, guaranteed. Your kidneys and your bones and bone marrow have oxalate crystals in them. This is a terrible problem to have, and you have to manage it for quite a long time going forward. And sometimes having this data is very helpful because there's a whole kind of complicated process of managing it once you have this toxicity disorder.
Yeah. Yeah. I highly, highly recommend people go check out your resources. SallyKNorton.com is the website.
That's right.
And yeah, highly recommend. There's a lot of great resources. The companion book that shows, she was holding it up for those listening via audio. It kind of shows the list of all the different foods, green light, red light, whether they're good or bad. So really, really helpful there because there's a lot of nuances here. And man, like I have a friend who he's like hardcore vegan and he's just like doesn't understand that couldn't be the best possible way to eat. And he's had like really, really bad psoriasis
Right.
to the point where he like goes on these long water fasts and it kind of gets rid of it for a little while, but then he has all these other fatigue and other issues. And then I sent him the first podcast we did. I don't think he wants to hear it, but man, there's so many instances like this. People are like, oh, I have psoriasis, I have arthritis, I have autoimmune, I have fatigue. Why am I feeling this way? And you might be thinking you're doing the right thing, right? You learned today, don't ever eat a spinach salad again or a spinach smoothie, or you're going to be way over. So highly recommend. One last question for you, Sally, as well. Is there any way, there's no like real solid test that can measure and show me if I'm high in oxalates? It's more about the symptoms, or is there a test?
There's not a good test.
Yeah.
There's not a good test. It's coming out in your urine principally, and you'd have to test your urine 9 times to guesstimate your average amount of oxalate in your urine. And even when it's low and looking normal, it could just be because your kidneys are so clogged with it that it's not coming out properly. So it is a symptom thing, and doing this switch from an unaware high oxalate diet to a very aware diet where you're controlling how much oxalate you're eating will give you a tool for starting to see the difference. But you do need to know what to look for. I try to cover some of that in the book. But fundamentally, I think the big takeaway, especially when it comes to performance and energy, is that oxalate is sucking energy and giving you a brownout stage. It is interfering with mitochondria. They cannot function properly. It interferes with cell function so fundamentally, it is scary when you get to really see what's going on, and it turns on inflammation. So you end up with cells that are underpowered and overburdened with inflammatory challenges, and you end up with an immune system that can no longer fight infections. So anyone with chronic infections like yeast infections, sinus infections, you name it, they are, babies who keep getting the latest thing, or like my strep as a child where I ended up losing my tonsils. My tonsils were blamed for, who knows, maybe I was born high oxalate. And that's why I've got a YouTube channel too that shares about, 13 stories of people talking about how this affected them, including families that show how much this affected their pregnancies and their children's early lives because the parents' diet, particularly the mothers, was too high in oxalate.
Yeah. So let's shout out a few more ways that people can follow you. Are you on like Instagram? What's the YouTube channel?
The Instagram and YouTube are the same. It's SK Norton. So it's the first two of Sally K. Norton. The website is Sally K. Norton. Everything else is SK Norton. And that's how you can find me. Now, I'm buried on YouTube. You're going to have to really make an effort to find me. So use Talor's link, because I've been interviewed by, 200 podcasters. So I will show up and it'll be someone else's channel. You won't find those oxalate stories there.
Yeah. We'll definitely make sure we link to it. And you are the foremost person right now spreading awareness about this. So thank you for all that you're doing. This was an incredible, eye-opening episode. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of messages about this. So that's always a good thing when we're kind of breaking people's old school worldview. I still see it every day. People operating on what I call 1980s health advice. Low fat. I need my oatmeal in the morning. I want low fat. I have my spinach smoothie later on in the day, and I'm eating healthy because this is what they taught me in 1980s health class. So I'm really, really happy that you're spreading awareness, and I'm sure you've already helped, I'm sure, thousands of people, and we'll keep spreading this word and hopefully help thousands more.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you being on my team, helping people become aware of this, because there's nothing more unjust than someone making an effort to be healthy and being paid back with health problems. It is so unfair. It's wrong. Everyone who's making an effort deserves to succeed, and I want to help them succeed at that.
You're amazing, Sally. Thank you so much. This has been incredible, and maybe we'll do it again in a year or two.
I look forward to it. I'm sure we will.
Thank you.
Well.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would really mean a lot to me if you would forward this episode along to any friends, family members, anyone that you think that would get value out of it and learn something important. The mission at Peak Performance is to help people prioritize and transform their health. And so if you think someone will get value, please do forward this episode along to them. Also, if you could please rate and review and subscribe on whatever podcast player you are listening to this on, we would greatly appreciate that as well. It means a lot. And I want to tell you about a couple of new products that we just released. You can get 20% off your first order at buypeakperformance.com. That's buypeakperformance.com. We just released a brand new grass-fed beef protein isolate. This is my favorite new protein powder because it's great for muscle building and recovering and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't give the stomach discomfort and gas that a lot of people get from different types of proteins like whey protein. Some types of plant proteins can do the same as well. It seems to be really, really easy on the stomach while still giving all the great benefits of muscle building and everything else that you want from taking in adequate protein. So check out our new beef protein isolate. We have it in unflavored, which I actually mix and blend with my morning coffee every morning. We have a vanilla and we have a chocolate. You can buy it on Amazon, but again, you also do get 20% off your first order at buypeakperformance.com, B-U-Y, peakperformance.com. We've also recently released organic mushroom coffee. We have these in Keurig compatible K-cup coffee pods. We have organic mushroom coffee with lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, turkey tail, and chaga mushrooms blended with the high altitude organic coffee that we've been using and that we've been famous for years. So that's been a big hit, that one as well. You can get on our website or Amazon, any of our products. And of course, we're always famous for our organic green superfood powder that has almost 5,000 reviews on Amazon with a very high star rating. We're known as the best tasting USDA certified organic green superfood powder with over 25 plus organic ingredients. Again, we also have the organic red superfood powder. We still, of course, have the organic plant protein for those who do prefer the plant protein, but I'm really excited about this new beef protein isolate and all of our other products. We do have over 100 products, so just check us out if you type in Peak Performance Supplements on Amazon or if you go to buypeakperformance.com. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.